Tonight on KTN Prime.
Naweza fika tu hapo area hiyo niweze kuona ndio huyu ama mama anieleze iko namna hii.
Is he the one? Kenyan man claims to be the father of Big Brother champion.
We want to join other democratically elected governments like USA, China, Russia, India, and Israel, who are not members of ICC.
Real strategy or hot air? Fresh attempt to pull Kenya out of ICC?
Kept his date with the court. Nairobi lawyer to be charged tomorrow.
And home away from home, the rosy side of life in Tana River.
This is KTN Prime with Yvonne Okwara and Wilson Mburu.
Well, a very good evening on this second day of September 2013. It is the 245th day of the year.
Now, on this day in 1969, the automated teller machine, or the ATM, made its debut in the US city of New York. And here at KTN, we also are beginning anew tonight.
But for lovers of our riveting investigative series, The Inside Story and Jicho Pevu, we have important information that has come to our notice as we were preparing the second part of the series, Wagigisi wa Mauaji and Call the Executioner.
And because we believe that the subject of terrorism is of grave national concern, we have decided to hold that second part until we have fully incorporated this new and critical information.
We would like to assure all our viewers that we are doing this out of our firm belief in telling every possible side of the story. Consequently, that second and final part of both Jicho Pevu and The Inside Story will come to you on Thursday at 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. in that order. We ask you to bear with us. Let's now turn to the day's top stories.
Now, tonight we begin with what could be the first step in reuniting a daughter and a long-lost father. KTN has found the man who claims to be the Kenyan father of Namibian entrepreneur Dilish Matthew, who recently won the Big Brother Africa competition.
Indeed, Abdi Galgalo Guyo, who is now retired from the military, says he went to Namibia as a peacekeeper in 1989 and met Dilish's mother.
Guyo says he was aware of the girl's existence, but financial constraints and communications challenges kept him from reaching out. KTN's Wilkista Nyabo now reports on the man's wishes for the woman he believes to be her daughter.
Abdi Galgalo Guyo is well known in his neighborhood. His children have grown up here. His wife mixes freely with the neighbors, and he runs a few businesses. But after years here, neighbors have only just discovered a new tidbit, one that stretches back to Abdi's days as a UNTAG officer serving in Namibia. 23 years after his return, the past has come calling in form of a daughter Abdi has never met, Namibia's Big Brother contestant and grand prize winner Dilish Matthews, now seeking to finally meet her father. In 1989, at the age of 20, Abdi left for Namibia, part of the Kenyan contingent of the United Nations Transition Assistance Group, sent in to monitor the first elections. There, he met Selma Pashukeni Matthews, Dilish's mother.
Tulikuwa tukiendanga weekends huko town. Ama saa zingine patrol kikazi. Vile watu nakutana tu tukakutana. Tukaongea. Toka hapo kabeba mpaka kambi, tukakaa naye hapo muda ya weekend hivi, akarudi nyumbani. Sasa nimejua nyumbani kwao nikatutura. Mimi nikipata nafasi sasa ni weekend, naondoka napitia kwao.
For over a year, the couple spent all their free time together. But the following July, Abdi Guyo was deployed back to Kenya, leaving behind an expectant Selma.
Mama tayari tu alikuwa kujifungua. Lakini sasa sisi inabidi ni kazi tu, hatukuwa tumekuja shughuli kama hiyo ama niweze kupata nafasi ya kubaki na yeye.
The young couple tried to stay in touch but drifted apart after the first few months.
Kuna mobile wakati hiyo, internet bado, hasa kitu kama hiyo tu. Communication ikapotea.
Abdi says financial constraints kept him from traveling back to Namibia. In 1994, he married and went on to have 5 children, and thus the story may have ended. Except that in 2013, Namibia selected 22-year-old Delish Matthews to represent her country in the Big Brother Africa contest. Her victory now shining the limelight firmly on her, and her wish straight out of the house to meet her father, the man who left a piece of himself in Namibia. Abdi is now seeking to make contact with Delish, but in the wake of Delish's multi-million shilling win, questions abound as to why it has taken him so long to claim her as his own.
Aim yangu sio hiyo, ile tu ni vile msichana amejitokeza na kweli ni yangu, ndio nimeitikia.
And while Delish launched the search for her father, what she may now find is a ready-made family waiting for her to complete it. Wilkes-Anyabwa, KTN.
Now let's move on to land matters. And ship up or ship out is the message President Uhuru Kenyatta is sending to court leader Raila Odinga in regard to solving the land issues at the coast. The president was speaking during the issuance of title deeds to landowners in Taita Taveta and Kwale counties. Betty Kialo with the details.
President Uhuru Kenyatta made his first stop in Kwale County, where residents turned up in large numbers for the historic exercise. One by one, they received their certificates, which many had been waiting for decades.
Tumengojea kwa muda mrefu sana. Kwa muda wa miaka 10. Lakini sasa tuna matumaini tunapata.
Hamkutupatia kura.
However, during the exercise, political rhetoric found its way in, with criticism of court leader Raila Odinga for politicizing the land issue.
Tunafanya kazi hiyo, kuna wengine ambao wanataka kuingiza siasa. Wakisema sijui kazi hii hatutakikani kuifanya. Kazi hii ni ya karani. Mimi nimezoea, nimeitwa mpishi, nimeitwa karani. Najiuliza, si hii yote ni makazi ambayo inafanywa na Wakenya?
Hii kazi ni ya makarani, lakini itapatia hawa watu hati miliki. Kazi hiyo ufanye, sisi tukusaidia. Wengine watakuwa messenger, wengine watakuwa kazi nyingine kidogo kidogo, mpaka kazi hii ifanyike, wananchi wawe na hati miliki.
These were the unforgiving responses that the president and his deputy had for Raila Odinga in regard to remarks he made yesterday in Bungoma County.
Kazi ya ardhi sasa tumeweka chini ya halmashauri inaitwa National Land Commission. Tulitoa kwa mkono ya rais.
There have been varied reactions to Uhuru's move to dish out title deeds, and as much as it's viewed as a noble initiative, pundits debate on just how effective it will be in addressing historical land injustices at the coast and the country at large. Landowners at the coast also have different views, with a number saying they are not trusting that the title deeds will indeed accord them ownership of their pieces of land.
Sasa leo tumekuja kupewa title deed, hatujahusishwa na mtu yote.
As the success of the issuance of title deeds hangs in the balance, Taita Taveta County remains a big shot for Uhuru Kenyatta, especially after his admission during the presidential debate that his family owns up to 30,000 acres of land in the county, where hundreds, if not thousands of families live as squatters.
We do own land in Taita Taveta. We own 30,000 acres as a family in Taita Taveta.
The land question was a weak link in the Jubilee campaigns early 2013, and with dishing out of the 60,000 title deeds, analysts say it may boost Jubilee's political lifeline for the future. Betty Kialo, KTN.
Thank you very much for that, Betty Kialo. And indeed, the president has spent quite a bit of time in the coastal region dishing out those title deeds. And we want to join up now with our senior coast reporter, Ferdinand Omondi, who joins us on telephone. Ferdy, a very good evening to you. If you can hear me, thank you very much for staying with us. Now, the president has been there, and we have seen quite a bit of rhetoric between the leaders from both sides of the political divide. But most importantly, what do the people on the ground feel about this whole issue? Ferdy?
Well, good evening, Yvonne. Well, the response here in the coast region has also been as varied as it has been in the political circles. There are a lot of people, especially those who have received their titles, who feel this is a step forward for them. They've been labeled as squatters in their own country for hundreds of years, for so many years, at least 50 years, at least since independence. Some of them say this goes back to the days of Vasco da Gama, if you will. But right now we have now the descendants, those people who are born and bred in places where they had pieces of land on which they were tenants paying rates every year, finally owning title deeds, which now the president says shall not provide them with that the economic emancipation, allow them to not do deeds like probably construct permanent housing or get loans to develop, and so there are relations everywhere for them. There's another school of thought that says this has not been thought out well. Remember, the adjudication has not yet been done by the National Land Commission, and there are fears even among those who received title deeds that perhaps disputes could come out in the future. Remember that President Kibaki once came to deliver title deeds here. They were contested. Lands Minister James Orengo also dished out title deeds. They were contested, and someone say, hey, before this is finally accepted by a bank, I will fully not believe that this is a valid title deed. Yvonne.
Indeed, thank you very much for that, Ferdinand. And the president has been there for a while. How much longer is he expected to be there? Which are some of the areas he's yet to visit?
Well, he has already visited six counties here in the coast region, all six, and been able to give the 60,000 title deeds, apart from Tana River County, where there was a huge dispute as to why only one section of a community of people, as the leaders were saying, were receiving their title deeds. And this just shows you the depth of the controversy that these matters can bring up, and perhaps that's why some pundits have reservations over the manner in which this is being handled, because historical injustices have not yet been addressed. And there's also a possibility that some of these title deeds which are being given out perhaps will be contested in the future by other purported landowners. So that is still another matter that they will have to look at in the future. Tomorrow, though, before that also the president was in Mombasa launching Bath 19, which expected also to boost the port of Mombasa in terms of trade. And tomorrow is also scheduled to meet head teachers who are meeting at a delegates conference in Mombasa. And as far as I know, that will be his last detail in the diary in the week-long schedule before perhaps going back to Nairobi for other duties. Yvonne.
All right, thank you very much for that, Ferdinand Omondi, who is our senior coast reporter, giving us the details on the president's tour of the coastal region and indeed where he is going to go next. Wilson?
Now let's move on to other matters, to Parliament now, where majority leaders have petitioned their speakers to recall the two houses over the Hague trials against the President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. The legislators want to revive those attempts to pull Kenya out of the treaty that created the ICC. Our political reporter Sam Ogina has been keeping an eye on that case with barely a week before Ruto's trial begins. He now joins us from our city centre studio with the latest. Sam?
Well, thank you indeed, Wilson, in studio. It is true that it is a new attempt by parliamentarians again to push for a referral of Kenya's ICC cases to be tried here back in Kenya. Remember that there have been several attempts by Kenya to actually refer these cases into Kenya. Remember that is the push by the then Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, and then also the Deputy President William Ruto. They actually also went on a shuttle diplomacy to actually try and get African nations to rally behind this push, as well as President Uhuru Kenyatta himself. So it is an approach that is actually not new per se, an attempt by the Jubilee government, but it is the Jubilee parliamentarians who say that they are quite ready to domesticate, that is the Africa Union resolution for referral of the ICC cases. They're ready to domesticate it so that the cases should be referred back to Kenya, but analysts are of a different opinion, saying that given this systematic withdrawal of that is ICC witnesses in both President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto cases, then Parliament's move to try and actually withdraw the cases through a parliamentary decree of some sort, then this means that it will actually hurt the drive by the commitment by the two gentlemen, that is the President and his deputy. Here's that story that we filed for you.
Deputy President William Ruto has appealed against the ICC judgment rejecting the transfer of his trials to either Kenya or Tanzania. In an application filed by his lead counsel Karim Khan, Ruto rapped the judges for allowing Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda's late submission on the eve of the judgment day. Saying it is a procedural impropriety, Ruto's defense states the late submission may have swayed the judge's decision. Ruto missed by a single vote to have his case transferred. Ruto's defense has challenged the ruling, saying in allowing the prosecution's late submission, neither the defense nor interested parties were allowed a rebuttal on the additional information. The prosecutor's change of position that would later impact on the judge's decision was informed by an open letter by Africa's Center for Open Governance, AFRICOG, Executive Director Gladwell Otieno. Ruto's defense wants the ICC presidency to reject the judge's decision and only reconvene the bench after defense submissions of the prosecutor's additional information and, if need be, submissions for both Kenya and Tanzania, or the bench to be reconvened to determine whether its earlier decision should be thwarted for procedural impropriety. But back home, Parliament is on an overdrive to reconvene earlier than the scheduled 17th September date. Majority leaders of both the Senate and the National Assembly have written to their speakers petitioning for an early recall.
A matter of this magnitude, where we have the deputy president being taken to a foreign country to go and stand trial, really, I strongly feel that as a National Assembly, that we are looking into very quickly reconvening Parliament.
Meanwhile, Jubilee Alliance parliamentarians say they will push for the exit of Kenya from the Rome Statute. The MPs say they will domesticate the Africa Union resolution for referral of the ICC cases.
We want to join other democratically elected governments like USA, China, Russia, India, and Israel, who are not members of ICC, to protect their citizens.
After two failed attempts to set up a local tribunal as a remedy to the ICC cases and subsequent approval of an anti-ICC motion by the 10th Parliament, without a revision of strategy, the 11th Parliament is still using the same cards. This, as experts warn, against the use of the same trick twice.
We will face ICC both legally and politically to unreservedly free Africa from exploitative, non-reliable partnerships.
The Cabinet Secretary in charge of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Amina Mohamed, I think she's the one who would be able to prepare a memo to the Cabinet. Cabinet will have to sit and approve any such decision to bring that matter to Parliament for purposes of approval from Parliament to withdraw.
In 2010, Parliament adopted Isaac Ruto's sponsored motion to repeal the International Crimes Act, withdrawing the country from the Rome Statute, but after approval, it hit a dead end. Samugina, KTN.
Well, that story leads us to a big question tonight, and we ask, do you support attempts by Jubilee MPs to have Kenya pull out of the ICC? Do you support attempts by Jubilee MPs to have Kenya pull out of the ICC?
Indeed, send your yes or no response with brief comments to the number 8040, and we will sample your views during this newscast and give you the poll results at the end of this bulletin. You can also get in touch with us us on Twitter. That's at KTN Kenya. You can tweet me at Yvonne Okwara and at Wilson_Mburu. Well, that is Kenya's latest plan to pull out of the Rome Statute, and indeed that fight takes root in Parliament. Thereafter, Kenya has about 4 options. So let's take a look at some of these options for you, shall we now? So here we go. We would have the process of withdrawing from the Rome Statute. We have several options. The first one that we've got here is that Kenya can choose to withdraw from the Rome Statute pretty much just like the US has done. What would need to happen? Well, Cabinet must meet and look at a memo that would have been presented by the Cabinet Secretary of Foreign Affairs, that would be Ambassador Amina Mohammed. That motion would then be taken to Parliament, at which point Parliament would decide to pass the motion that withdraws from the treaty. Now, there is just one catch to this particular option. Notice must be given to the ICC of this intention not less than 12 months. That means this is something we would be talking to the ICC about in September 2014. Let's take a look at the second option that we've got. Kenya can choose to lobby the African Union. The African Union can then go before the Assembly of Treaties to take a look at whether Kenya is being treated fairly or not when it came to the Rome Statute that was signed and ratified as a treaty right here in this country and in our constitution. Now let's take a look at option number 3. Kenya can choose to bring the cases back home. Now, this would mean that Kenya courts would have to prefer charges, the exact same charges, and the exact 2 individuals in our Kenyan courts. Another catch here once again. The courts must be independent, they must be competent to try the cases, and they must also have the capacity to do so. Proving this may seem a tall order, and again, automatic withdrawal of these cases from the ICC is not a process that is guaranteed. The fourth and final option that we have is to actually take this to the Security Council, that is of the United Nations Security Council, which is made up of the 5 permanent members, that is China, the US, France, Russia, and the UK. And you'll remember Kenya's ambassador to the UN, Macharia Kamau, who had written a letter to the UN Security Council raising his concerns with the ICC cases, and he did in fact mention in his concerns that the prosecutor is answerable to no one apart from the court, and indeed that the court lacks legitimacy in the international community because the court has only had 1 conviction in the last 10 years with millions of dollars being spent. These are some of the options the members of Parliament, both National Assembly and the Senate, will be taking a look at as they reconvene later on this month. And that's what we have for you regarding the ICC. Wilson?
Thank you very much for that, Yvonne. And we'll, of course, continue looking at the goings-on at the ICC and continue to inform you accordingly. Don't you go away. We'll take a short break, but we have much more lined up.
Cohesion, Tana River style. The story of hope and coexistence in a war-torn county.
I'm just a mere businesswoman here. Within the 100 days that Jubilee talked about, nothing has happened so far. Completely, absolutely, utterly nothing.
You're watching KTN Prime.
All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching KTN Prime. Many thanks for joining us once again. Wilson?
Well, let's move on. Lawyer Kathy Kilonzo today presented herself at the Directorate of Criminal Investigations for pre-trial processing. Kathy will appear in court tomorrow to take a plea. However, it is still not clear what charges she will be answering to. KTN's political editor Ben Kitili is keeping an eye on those developments.
The trial of Kathy Kilonzo is officially on. Accompanied by her lawyers, including Siaya Senator James Orengo and Makueni Governor Kivutha Kibwana, she presented herself at the Directorate of Criminal Investigations Monday for formal pretrial processing. The process took a few hours, and when Kethi emerged, her defense team was optimistic that she will be acquitted of all charges leveled against her.
Since it has been decided that Kethi should go to court, we shall be there. People of Makueni shall be there. I'm sure many young people will be there. Many Kenyans will be there with Kethi.
On Friday, Director of Public Prosecutions Kiriako Tobiko gave a nod for charges to be preferred against Ms. Kilonzo. Only last month, police quizzed her over allegations of theft and forgery of a voter's slip. Police also suspected that Kethi's names and other details were fraudulently printed onto the said voter's slip, allegations viewed by the Code Coalition as a witch hunt by Jubilee.
The intended prosecution is being pursued for an extraneous purpose which has nothing to do with the administration of criminal justice in this country.
Kethi is out on police bond until Tuesday, when she is set to take a plea. It is not clear what charges Kethi will be answering to or which other individuals may be charged with her. This court case has led to questions being raised over the future of Ms. Kilonzo's young political career and even her largely successful legal career.
The Law Society of Kenya cannot take action against Kethi at the moment until and unless there is a conviction.
It has been an unforgiving terrain for Kethi ever since her failed attempt to succeed her late father Mutula Kilonzo as Senator of Makueni. And despite the optimism from her camp, the court case is clearly another obstacle on her path. Ben Kiteli, KTN.
Now, elsewhere, it is emerging that county governments are yet to receive funds from the national government months after the devolved system of government took effect. Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru says the disbursement of funds will be finalized once the Kenya Revenue Authority releases funds to the Treasury and upon authorization by the Controller of Budget. Here's our senior reporter Rita Tinina with the details.
At the Kenya School of Government, a two-day devolution conference kicked off. The main agenda, seeking ways of improving intergovernmental relations between the national and county governments. Already, money matters are causing friction between the two levels of government, with governors pushing for a referendum to increase the allocation of funds to the counties.
Hujajenga hata mahali kidogo. Umeanza nduru. Hii pesa ni kidogo, twende referendum. Sasa let there be enough money in the counties. Do not oppose. Tunataka pesa ikuje mashinani tufanye maendeleo.
The national government is yet to release funds to the counties. The constitution stipulates that 15% of the national revenue will go to the counties. The government has agreed to increase the percentage to 32% and says there is a procedure in the disbursement of funds.
The money is not resident in the treasury. It's actually first collected by the Revenue Authority and the various institutions, and then using the cash flow plans, that money is actually then given to the counties. The procedures require that the budgets are approved. The controller of budget is the one who authorizes the resources to move from the consolidated fund.
The government has not given an indication of when counties can expect the money, but counties which were required to review their budgets will have to do so before they receive any money.
Maybe some misunderstanding of the procedures that are required, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because you've been allocated this amount of money, the money goes immediately the next day. The counties have to ensure that they have met their obligations with regard to public financial management.
With the shift to the devolved system of government, money is proving to be a thorny issue, and the country is still in search of the perfect formula to ensure the national and county governments, which are distinct and interdependent, function seamlessly to ensure the promise of devolution is realized to the fullest. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Now, as leaders grapple with money issues across the country, in Tana River, residents are happy to display a fairly unfamiliar side of their county.
Indeed, Tana River has been known for little more than the frequent intertribal clashes. But it turns out that it is also a melting pot of various cultures from across the country.
And as our senior coast reporter Ferdinand Omondi found out, it also revolves around fish.
Mama Jane Opio chops away. She is making firewood for use in her daily business at the village of Moa in the Tana Delta. Once she's done, she collects the pieces and heads to the village smokehouse. Mama Jane Opio is a fishmonger who arrived here from Ugenya in western Kenya way back in 1976 in search of fish.
Ula jomona kuongo biro to wacho ni kocha tich ber kendo rech ntie koro ng'en ka winje ni gimoro ntie to be nyaka idhi adhiya.
Mama Opio is among a community of Luos who have swapped their native Nyanza homes and the shores of Lake Victoria for the banks of the Tana River. Here they found the pastoralist Orma people who they have nicknamed Jodhok, which loosely translates to livestock keepers. They also found the Tana River infested with crocodiles and hippos, but also abounding fish. And they made here home. Bernard Anyanga, who hails from Kano Plains, says he has been in the Tana Delta for 20 years and singles out Moa village as his best residence.
Sehemu zingine nilikuwa najaribu lakini nilikuwa nalemewa na maisha. Lakini nilipofika hapa naona ninajimudu kabisa kimaisha. Naweza kulisha familia, naweza kupeleka mtoto shule. Ndio maana nikaamua ni settle hapa.
But it is not just the Luos who stay here. The lucrative fish trade has also attracted the Luhya community, who are traditionally farmers. Among them is Mama Margaret Juma, who first arrived at the Delta in 1982 and settled at the Bura scheme to do what she knew best.
Kilimo ndio ilituleta kutoka Busia kwetu ni Funyula. Sasa tukalima mwiso, pambe ikakufa. Skimu ikakufa, watu tukaanza kuhangaika kuombaomba. Sasa mimi nilitoka huko nikaingia kwa biashara vya samaki.
She says she traded in fish around the Delta between 1992 and 1999. That year, she got caught up for the first time in the infamous inter-community clashes pitting farmers and pastoralists during her stay in the Bililo area.
Wakaua watu tulikuwa nao, tukakimbia, tukaenda Kipini, tukakaa Kipini miaka 2. Katoka Kipini nikaingia Moa sasa.
In Moa, Margaret says she found the people living together well in spite of ethnic differences. The native Ormas have accommodated the Luhyas, Luos and Giriamas who have made the riverine village home.
Hapa tunaisa urafiki tu. Wajaluo tunakaa Ujaluoni, Waluya wanakaa Uluyani, Wagiriama wanakaa Ugiriama, Wahorma wanakaa Wahorma. Sauri lugha ndio tuelewani. Ndio naleta sasa tunakaa, wale tunaelewana, wale tunaelewana.
While Kiswahili breaks the language barrier, some of them have gone the extra mile to understand each other's languages. Margaret, for instance, speaks Luo rather well. The symbiosis has extended to the cultural practices.
Kuna yale tumejifunza kutoka kwa wenzenu, nao pia wamejifunza mambo mengi kutoka kwetu kwa sababu walikuwa tumewakuta si wavuvi, lakini tumewafundisha uvuvi. Sasa tulipokuta wao ni wafugaji, wametufundisha kufu.
One such Orma who has substituted livestock for fish is Filippo Barisa.
Kazi ya uvuvi si mbali sana, ni maisha tu. Ndio nasema natamani mwenzangu, naona nafua mzuri, napata pesa. Hata mimi nasema wacha ninunue ndoano niingie pale nipate kidogo.
We found Barisa just back from an outing in the river, and it appears he learned his trade quite well. Some of the catch was still live and kicking. The mudfish and its cousins are known to last long out of the water. With plenty of fish to go around and adequate arable and grazing land, the people of Moa are making a killing.
Pande ya kondoo kidogo kwa mbuzi 3. Sasa nachunga tu. Huko nalima, huko navua, napata changu.
Ninavua, alafu nikaja nikageuka mkulima, nikaona kuna ardhi ya kustawisha.
Moa village is a perfect example of how cohesion works. Not only do communities of different ethnic backgrounds live together harmoniously, they're also learning from one another in a mutually beneficial relationship. The successful sharing of resources here is a distant cry from what happens beyond the village, where a scramble for similar resources has led to bloody killings between communities for decades. In 2012, at least 200 died in the Tana Delta over unresolved disputes between pastoralists and farmers, which boiled over to tribalism and politics. Yet, as the killings swept the Delta, more village survived unscathed.
La koronga to kuda kudi to kuri mumi wawachu no winjiri nkecho kwada okigida kodo okigilawa.
Indeed, Barissa, who hails from one of the warring communities, is grateful that where he lives, peace has prevailed and asserts the village sticks together as a family in good times and bad times.
Amani sahi watoto nasoma pamoja, kila kitu nafanyana. Hapa moa tunaishi hivyo, lakini huko wana mambo yao yamechacha, sijui umechoma nyumba, sijui umeua, sijui unachinja. Huko tunasikia tu. Tunaomba hapa kwetu usiingie hiyo
And as long as the peace and understanding prevails, Moa village and its resources earns its people a living. The fish caught is sold in wholesale to major traders as far as Mombasa, while local vendors buy their stock for sale in neighboring areas like Garsen and Tarasa. Kono manote yadi? Mayari ogiprario.
Ginyera tanase udote.
Ginyera. Tamba yudo resh. Aguero kamano. Right. Ferdinand Omondi, KTN, Tana River.
Indeed, nothing like a good meal of fish to bring warring communities together. Thank you very much for that, Ferdinand Omondi in Tana River. We want to take a short break right now, but we have some business news coming up for you next. And we have Bonnie Tunya, who's at our business studio. Bonnie, what do you have for us?
Hey, good evening, Yvonne. I must love Fadi's sign-off was amazing. I mean,
Absolutely.
That was a class act. That was excellent. But talking of business, did you know that the war in Syria, or rather America's threat to Syria, could affect you? That is what we have coming up in this bulletin.
How much will the impending war on Syria impact on Kenya? Desert Derby when camels come calling in Maralal.
You're watching KTN Prime.
Good evening and welcome to a fresh new look on KTN Business. Today, my name is Bonnie Tunya. On this second day of September, the cost of crude oil in the international markets is on the edge and likely to go up. Now, this is due to plans of an attack on Syria by the United States of America, amongst other issues. Adai Changole explains how this will affect the ordinary Kenyan.
Peter Congo has been a taxi driver for more than 20 years, and through the years, he has watched the sector flourish following its liberalization in the 1990s.
Baada ya shop maduka ama nini, nikaprefer hii duka iwe duka yangu ya kubeba watu.
But he says business has been anything but rosy in the recent years.
Zamani kulikuwa kuzuri kwa sababu pesa ilikuwa, lakini siku hizi sijui kama ni serikali imekanyagia pesa ama ni nini, kwa sababu hata wateja hakuna.
The main problem has been the rapid increase in fuel prices that have forced taxi operators such as Congo to also increase fares. This has led to a marked reduction in passengers as people opt for cheaper modes of transport. And so far, this increase in prices has been internally driven, primarily by government policy, which has affected taxation, increased inflation, and driven exchange rate volatility. But now a major external threat could herald doom for the industry.
After careful deliberation, I have decided that the United States should take military action against Syrian regime targets.
Talk of an impending strike on Syria by the United States of America and several European nations has already driven oil prices to a 5-year high, and an actual strike could drive it even higher. Analysts anticipate that oil prices could hit $150 per barrel, which would push prices beyond the record highs recorded in 2011 when oil prices hit $147 per barrel. The high fuel cost would also have a knock-on effect on the economy, increasing the cost of transport and the prices of food, thereby increasing inflation, all of which would make Kenyans even poorer and push the cost of living higher. and that would mean even less people would use Congo's services, which could put him and others on the slippery path to unemployment, a fact that could impact heavily on the economy.
Wanaweza tafuta mambo ingine kwa sababu serikali iko na mambo mingi ya kupata pesa, lakini sio atiipate kwa mafuta. Mafuta wacha ya itelemuke, ndio kila mtu apate na riziki yake.
As the world awaits a decision on Syria, Congo will be one of the many Kenyans that will be hoping that nothing drastic happens just so that his livelihood is protected. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business Today.
The vast green tea leaves in Kenya's Rift Valley is fast turning to purple as farmers show interest in a new tea variety. Farmers in tea-growing regions in the country are slowly turning to purple tea. The variety also, as players in the sector try to diversify the country's major source of foreign exchange. The TRFK 3061 variety of tea has generated considerable interest, especially in Nandi, where it has thrived, and the traditional tea-growing regions of Kericho and parts of central Kenya. The crop is currently used as mother bushes to multiply purple tea in the region. Farmers purchase cutting at 1 shilling and 50 cents, and demand at the Tea Research Foundation of Kenya is currently outstripping the supply. The research facility expects multinational and Nyayo tea zones to expand production of the new variety of tea in the plantations and to add to Kenya's competitiveness in tea growing as a country.
It will take a bit of time before it gathers momentum. There will always be pioneers, people who go into it first, and either they make good money or they find that they have made a mistake and they may have to go back into their plans again. But I do believe that the research has been done very well on the demand for this purple tea. There are people who are already selling, supplying the market, and they're getting fairly good prices.
The Capital Markets Authority has disqualified former Savo Securities Managing Director Fred Mweni from being appointed by any listed firm for a period of 15 years for his involvement in the fraudulent sale of government securities. Mweni had been suspended for an unspecified period in 2012 for trading of alleged fake treasury bonds valued at 39.5 million shillings by his investment advisory firm Savo Securities. Following investigations over the last 10 months, the CMA has also disqualified Moses Muregi from the central bank and Bokole Masha, a director at Savo Securities, for a period of 15 and 10 years respectively. Savo Securities has also been required to surrender the capital gains worth 3.85 million shillings, while Apex Africa also expected to surrender a total of 3.8 million shillings earned from the purchase and sale of fraudulent bonds. The CMA says this is part of an enforcement measures taken to ensure that the highest standards of governance and transparency are observed in the capital markets. Right, moving on, the government will spend $3.75 billion of the 326.25 billion shillings from China for the construction of a new standard gauge railway. Drafting of the agreement, according to Cabinet Secretary for Transport and Infrastructure Engineer Michael Kamau, is in its final stages. Out of the $3.75 billion concession loan, $1.25 billion will be spent on rolling stock, while $2.5 billion will be used to lay down the new standard gauge line. Currently, Rift Valley Railways is being put on spot for failing to meet its end of the bargain on cargo haulage and truck upgrading. In a meeting held in July this year, Kenya and Uganda government officials met RVR management and agreed on a new condition requiring the concessional to pool more resources to revitalize the facility.
Key to the growth of this country, because I believe the line from Mombasa to Nairobi is going to add a very big component of our GDP and is about to contribute significantly to the economic growth, maybe by 2 or so percentage points.
Well, that's all the business you need to know on the second day of September. But now let's take a look at how your money is working for you on the Financial Market Review coming up next.
KTN Business in association with
Safaricom Business. Get a Lipa na M-Pesa till for your business today. To sign up, SMS LIPA to 21366.
Well, that's a good place to end business. I hand over things to Yvonne and Wilson at the News Center.
Thank you very much, Bonnie Tunya, at our business studio. Great new look you've got there as well. Thank you very much for the business news tonight, right here on KTN Prime. Right, Wilson?
Well, let's go on and have a look at the stories that we had prepared for you tonight. Let's go for that recap now. Well, thank you very much for keeping it KTN Prime. We now move on to a story that will remind you of King Solomon in the Bible and his wisdom in deciding the true mother of a baby being claimed by two women. Well, in Bungoma, two women are fighting for a 7-day-old baby boy. The two are said to be best friends but are now set for battle in court for the child. Sharon Bomanyi reports.
A rare case of biblical nature made manifest in Chebosi village in Bungoma County. A case of two women claiming to mother the same child. The women, Elizabeth Nafula and Elizabeth Wambui, would appear to not only share a first name, but also this 7-day-old baby boy. Nafula calls the child Isaac, while Wambui calls him Dennis. Incidentally, the two have been close friends.
Mwenzangu akanipeleka kwa mkunga kama rafiki. Sasa vile alinipeleka kujifungua, kufika huko, kweli yenyewe mimi sikuwa na pesa.
Nafula says that Wambui would always accompany her to the clinic, paying all the fees and processing all the necessary documents. Little did she know that Wambui was apparently filling in her name in these documents as the mother of the child and not Nafula. On the day of delivery, Wambui offered to help carry the child.
Baadaye mimi kumuuliza sunilete mtoto. Ananiambia mtoto ni wake. So mimi vile niliona hivyo nikasema hapana, ndio nikachukua hatua nikasema hapana.
Forced to use Solomonic wisdom in deciding the case, the police sought the help of a caregiver with a local children's organization. The test, breastfeeding. And alas, Nafula could breastfeed the child, whereas Wambui could not.
Vile nilimtoa kwa kitanda, alikuwa anajifanya ananyonyesha, lakini mtoto alikuwa amepewa uji ya wimbi. Sasa vile nilifanya upelelezi nijue huyu mtoto ni wake ama sio wake, maana wamama wenye tunajifungua tunajua vile unakaa. Nikachukua huyu mama, nikavaa gloves, nikaenda naye kwa toilet, amechukua nyanya amejipaka huku chini, aonyeshwe ile amezaa huyu mtoto. Haya, huyu wa pili naye vile nilikuwa nafanya check up, nikaona kweli matiti ni ya mtu mwenye amezaa. Sasa hapo kwa police station nikachukua afisa akachukua na mama mwenye alikuwa amezaa, wakaenda naye kwa mkunga mwenye alimsalisha. Anaitwa Achuka kutoka Bokoli Roman. Huyo mama akatoa ushuhuda ya kwamba walienda wa mama wawili. Huyu na rafiki yake. Lakini vile walienda huyu ndiye alikuwa na mimba. Akachifungua na akasema ati hana chochote.
And if you think that's shocking enough, there's more. Further investigations reveal that Wambui cannot bear children. She is allegedly barren.
Lakini kinaonyesha ya kwamba yeye ni mama asiye na uwezo, ni tasa ya kupata watoto. Na linalosikitisha ni kwamba huyu mama ana watoto wengine wawili wasichana ambao hata haieleweki kama ni wake wa kuwazaa.
Wambui was arrested yesterday and brought before Webuye presiding magistrate Stella Abuya, seeking to establish legally whether the baby boy is in fact Isaac, son of Elizabeth Nafula, or Dennis, son of Elizabeth Wambui. Sharon Momanyi, KTN.
Sharon Momanyi there. And let's go on to our sports studio. And Nick Mudimba is standing by. Nick, what do you have prepared for us tonight?
Yeah, thank you very much, and of course welcome to the team. It's been a tight day for us at the Sports Desk. We have more for you, including at least we have only 2 hours before the transfer window closes, and we have surprise transfers for you and more, including more of the soccer in the country. All that after a short break.
Coming up in sports, Prince Louis' KCB on the verge of clinching the Rugby Circuit Series title.
Ati kijana nakwambia I love you wapi? Nilimwambia mimi hadithi moja iliyosema kana msichana na mvulana anamwambia msichana I love you, I can even jump over the fire. I can jump over the cliff. Very good. Na akaandika chini akasema, I'll see you on Saturday if it does not rain. Sasa mnajua mapenzi gani hiyo?
You're watching KTN Prime.
All right, welcome to KTN Sports today. I am Nicholas Mudimba. Gor Mahia still passed the summit of the Kenya Premier League despite their abandoned match against Sony Sugar. National soccer team head coach Adelam Ruch expects a full house tomorrow after this weekend's round of matches. All right, KCB are the only side to have won 2 tournaments this season and have a comfortable 10-point lead at the summit of the Safaricom 7 Series standings at 74 points. The Christie Sevens, which will close the regional circuit, will take place in Nairobi on September 7th and 8th.
Prince Louis 7's title holders KCB on top of the Safaricom 7 Series standings at 74 points after a 24-5 win over Impala in the final match played at the Nakuru Athletics Club Sunday evening. With only 1 tournament left, the Bankers, who were the only side to win 2 tournaments, are 10 points ahead of Strathmore University on 64, who thrashed Homeboys 26-21 in the playoffs. KCB captain Andrew Wamoni attributed the good run to hard work.
This win, we have waited for long to win another tournament. It's just an example of hard work pays, and I think we have achieved what we came here to do in Nakuru.
Basically hard work and just commitment from everyone, the technical team, the players. It's been a lot of commitment.
Last year's circuit winners, Kenya Harlequin, who were thrashed 31-7 by Nakuru RFC in the plate final, are third with 63 points. Mwamba, who were the summit before Prince Louis Sevens, dropped to the 4th spot with 60 points, a point ahead of Homeboys, who are on 59. Impala have 57 points, while Nakuru has 41 points. The Christie Sevens, which will close the regional circuit, will take place in Nairobi on September 7th and 8th. Victor Ogale, KTN Sports.
All right, thank you, Victor. This year's CBA Africa Concours d'Elegance to be held on September 29th. The Nairobi Racecourse has attracted over 60 cars and 30 motorcycles, among them entries from South Africa, Tanzania and Uganda. Uganda Bikers Association is expected to ride their trail of 15 motorcycles from Kampala to compete on 29th September. The car entries for this year's concours event include a 1934 Alvis Firefly Phoenix Aviations, 1928 Tudor, 1966 Peugeot 404, among other machines. This will be the 43rd annual event to be organized by the Alfa Romeo Owners Club, and 20-year-old Manraj Jabal has entered a 1978 Yamaha XT500 for the event and will battle it out among the young competitors, including 13-year-old Haman and Ravjir, who will show the 1988 Honda CBR 600R.
Yeah, it's a Yamaha 1978 XT500, and it's one of the first enduro bikes, and in fact it won the Paris Dakar when it was first manufactured in '78. Yeah, and it's a good bike.
Well, of course, on KTN Prime, we can't leave you go to bed like that, but we still have more for you, and I'll give it back to Wilson and Yvonne from the other side on that part of the news.
Desert Derby when camels come calling in Maralal.
KTN Weather, brought to you by
Morting Doom Power Guard.
And we stand prepared to defend Africa. We take a stand to fight malaria.
Well, let's get back to the BQ question that we had asked you earlier on tonight. And the question was, do you support attempts by the Jubilee MPs to have Kenya pull out of the ICC? Do you support attempts by the Jubilee MPs to have Kenya pull out of the ICC? And we have the final results now. And 58% of you say that they do not support the attempt by the Jubilee government, while 42% say they do support those attempts. Yvonne.
Indeed. And before we get to the SMSs, I'm sure we can take a look at the tweets that you have sent in. Yatich, you say, yes, Kenya is a sovereign state just like the US, China, Israel, India, and others with democratically elected leaders. You're watching us from Wajir County. Thank you for tweeting. Another one, Mike Okwara. The crimes that have accrued while Kenya is still a signatory will be tried by the court, withdrawal notwithstanding. Architect, you say, I think it's time Kenya realized the mistake it made. It's a nice, tactical, and impressive move by the leader of majority. And finally, Jude Tobias, you say, I don't think pulling out of the Rome Statute will bring justice. They are trying to defend the president and his deputy. Right,
well,
some text messages?
Those are the tweets that we got, and let's look at some of the SMSs that you sent, and we have some of them here. This is a classical case of desperation. That's of course not. And we have another one here that says, yes, the case has turned political. We have another no that says, let them go to The Hague. Our courts are not mature enough. And that is what we had asked you tonight. We had asked you whether you support or the attempt by the Jubilee MPs to have Kenya pulled out of the ICC or the Rome Statute. And let's finally to the story about camels, tourists, pastoralists, and a race. The 23rd International Camel Derby culminated in Maralal after a 3-day contest among pastoralist communities, including the Turkana, the Mburu, the Pokot, the Rendile, and the Dutch Dang community from Ethiopia.
Indeed, and the Derby is normally held to promote peace amongst these communities, known to be consistently warring with each other. During the event, which attracted 27 foreign countries, lots of cultural activities like mass mixed dances from all the tribes took center stage, as well as discussions held toward eliminating cattle rustling and intertribal killings among these communities. Indeed, and that is where we leave it at for now this evening. We thank you so much for joining us on KTN Prime tonight. We do wish you a very good, restful evening ahead.
Well, from here at KTN Prime and KTN Kenya, we wish you a lovely evening. Good night.